Computer audio,
Okay.
sharing computer, turning on music, and here we go.
Okay, we're back.
You're good. It's not very often that VBC starts 1 minute early, but we are doing it special tonight because we have a special guest beaming in from Dong Ha, Vietnam, the one and only Todd DiPastino.
Hello here. I'm with my sidekick, Con, who is our guide in Vietnam. We're in Dong Ha, Vietnam right now. Day 6 of our trip. Something like that. We're now we started in Hanoi. We worked our way to Hue. We're now in Dong Ha, and
oh no, Todd's internet.
Who's been our guide in 2018 and 2020, and it is today. And what I was saying to the others before is that Con has a fascinating personal story and a family history. He's an expert, of course, in the history of Vietnam, and he's the one who has been really teaching as a culture and a country, in addition to a war. And so, Con, this is where you say what travel group we are. How great we are. That we're good.
So far, yeah. This is a great trip. Yeah.
And why did you want to start doing tours for Americans in Vietnam?
You mean for Gate One?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Before working for Gate One, I worked for the Dutch company.
They may have froze again. Their internet's a little shot. Oh, they're caught up. Good.
Yeah.
So keep on going.
Okay. And one day, the overseas managers of Gate One in Vietnam met me, and he asked me, "Do you want to work for Gate One?" I had no idea so who Gate One is. And finally, I met him, and he told me that Gate One is an American company. And then I work as a local guy. They based on my score after 2 or 3 trips.
Yeah.
And then they sent me to Thailand, Bangkok, and I was trained in Bangkok to become the tour manager of Gate One. And on the trip, I have met a lot of the American veterans,
Right.
yeah, who served in Vietnam during the Civil War. So it is so interesting for me to do this trip.
Yeah.
I learn a lot, and that's why I love to run this trip.
And Con's dad was in the NVA, and so we learned, about the Vietnamese side of the war. And we have some Vietnam veterans here. We have Rich Dorr. Rich, you were Phu Bai during the Vietnam War?
Yeah, 63rd Signal Battalion and Phu Bai's Signal Support Detachment.
And we hope to at least stop by to see where there were 2 kind of Phu Bai bases, the Air Force side and the Army side. You were on the Army side. I would like to stop and just take a look and see what's there.
Well, it's going to be totally different because the airport side is unbelievable. It's 21st century already.
Right, exactly. Thanks, Rich. And with Jerry Augustine. Jerry served in the 196th Light Infantry Brigade. And Jerry, we've been sharing a lot of stories on the bus going back. You were on the ground in the infantry. What is your impression of Vietnam so far?
Oh, it became so modern, and I just can't.
See if they catch up to us. They may have frozen. I know Todd was experiencing some Wi-Fi issues in the hotel that they're in.
Now,
they're caught up. Okay, go ahead, Todd.
Okay, it's like, so we won't go.
Give it another minute here. Thank you all for your patience. We could begin the never get off the boat, says Cliff Fahar.
Yeah, endorsement. Oh, here's the greatest tour guide in the world. Con's number 2. Yeah, Mary, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Miss you guys. Hi, Don Nemchek, if you're out there.
This is great. Bob Ankaitis, you were in the 101st Airborne Division, and we're going to go by Firebase Tomahawk today and hope and see what is there. You served at Firebase Tomahawk. What did you do there?
Fired artillery rounds at the enemy as much as we could.
As much as you could.
But you know what? We talked about Vietnamization on the bus the other day. Just north of here, there was a Vietnamese fire base. We were on the mountainside, the west side of Highway 1 on Tomahawk. They were on the east side, and that was during the time that Vietnamization was taking place. And any fire missions that we got that they could handle were given to them. We only took them if they couldn't handle them.
So it's been a wonderful trip. It's been rainy, but somehow we've avoided the raindrops ourselves. It's rained at night. It's rained when we're on the bus, but it doesn't seem to rain when we're out and about walking around. I know I can see this is very choppy. I don't want to hold you up any longer. Thanks for your patience and having us on for a few minutes, Sean.
Oh, of course, Todd. Always happy to hear from you. I was saying to Todd before we started the program that they've been more lucky with the rain than the Steelers were. Woof. What a weekend. I think we all kind of knew where we were going with that game, but it's unfortunate. Otherwise, Todd, we all hope that you have a good rest of your trip there in Vietnam. And Ben here in the chat says, please tell Con I said hi, everybody from the 2018-2020 tour. And they say hi. If you're not running out, please feel free to join us for a little while here. I want to let everybody know right here at the top of the program that though I went through 4 years of acting school, I was not taught how to make this voice. This has been fun, let me tell you. I'm Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the VBC. If you're joining VBC for the very first time, our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories, to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. We have a great program lined up with Bob Connor tonight to talk about repatriation of remains. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. We'll start off here, as we always do. We're going to thank our sponsor, go through a bit of announcements. We have an interesting announcement by Tina. Tina, is your last name pronounced Tarek? I asked you to unmute.
Yep, Tarek. Thank you. Close enough. Yeah.
Tina Tarek has you're getting your doctorate, and you have a very interesting thing. We're going to get to it in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, make sure I'm on the correct. So you all bear with me. I appreciate you all absolutely for coming on the program tonight and being with us to hear Bob's story. Here we are. I found the right slide. We're doing it. There we go. So we want to thank tobacco-free Adagio Health. They have been a longtime sponsor of the VBC. As you can see there on the screen, they are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use. You know, I sound like I've been a smoker for like 50 years. And I've only been alive for 42, so I don't know how that makes sense. But they are dedicated to reducing and preventing tobacco use and to getting the word out about the hazards of smoking and secondhand smoke. They are all about health. They want people to quit. They have classes, nicotine replacement therapy, and a popular quit line, 1-800-QUIT now. And they also educate people, children especially, about tobacco use from cigars, cigarettes, pipes, chew, snuff, and other nicotine products like vaping. And finally, they advocate for public and private policies that ensure healthy places to live, work, and play. You can learn all there is to know about tobacco-free Adagio Health on their website, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Thank you so much, Tobacco Free, for sponsoring the VBC. I'm going to make sure that everybody gets here into the room. There we go. And this is our current VBC magazine. I'll hold it up for you all so you can see it on my screen. If you don't have this magazine, it's because we don't have your address. It is free quarterly. We send this out to everyone that we have an address for. So if you don't get it, please email me or Todd your address, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that. Really great read, cover to cover. Todd does most of the writing, but it's based a lot on the stories that we hear on these programs that we hear in person. And this one especially was a gentleman who joined us that served with Elvis, and we thought that would be a fun cover story to have for our fall issue. And Wednesday, I know Larry Guggens just called me and said that there was an e-blast that went out that said that program is running from 10 a.m. to noon. That is wrong. That program is going to start, go 9 to 10:30, 8:30 will be breakfast on Wednesday. at Seven Oaks in Beaver. You can get there, I think, anytime between about 7:30 8. I will be hosting that program. On Wednesday, we will have kids there from Dutch Ridge Elementary. They've submitted a ton of questions to me that I'm very excited to get to. Excuse me. For the veterans in attendance. So we'll have a packed room, great breakfast there at Seven Oaks, a really wonderful time. I hope to see you there. But if you are coming, come early. Don't come for the 10 to 12. There is no 10 to 12. This will go from 9 to 10:30. And we will let everybody know to expect that. We have a new episode of the Lioness Origin Story podcast. It's a great podcast that is following the story of the Army Lionesses, the women who served in Iraq prior to the combat exclusion policy being removed. They were in combat. And then this podcast also follows into the female engagement teams from the Marines and the cultural support teams. And an exciting development of this story is there was a bill that has just been put through to Congress to give the women credit for the combat that they saw prior to that combat exclusion policy. It is our hope that the Lionesses and the Fets will also be added into that to receive the credit that they deserve. But the interesting thing about this is that the people that are putting this bill together are using our podcast as research, because I believe that VBC is the only one who's going out and gathering these stories right now. So I highly recommend it. If people that have listened to it have talked to me and said that it's amazing, I kind of just come in and do the intro, and then I let Daria Summers, documentarian, take off and host. Her and Shannon Morgan are wonderful, and they bring on really special guests to talk about their stories. But I highly recommend this podcast. Just look up Lioness, the Origin Story. Also, the Scuttlebutt. We will have a new episode next week with the gentleman there, Pat D'Amico. If you were with us last week for the Guantanamo Bay program, he joined us last week to talk about his time in Guantanamo Bay. This is just a smattering of some of our recent programs of different guests that we've had on. Loving the Scuttlebutt and everything that we're doing on there. We have many more programs coming up, including I have on Emily Bleeker, who's the author of When We Were Enemies. She joined me today for a recording, so we'll release that episode in a couple of weeks. So something to look forward to. Bob Connor is going to be joining us. That's a great picture of you, Bob. You look young and healthy and ready to go.
I was tired that day. That was after we got back from, well, not back. We were assigned to Bien Hoa, but after the battle was over for us and it moved further east over to Long Bin, we went around and picked up some pieces of debris, so to speak. That was a flare parachute, what that is I'm carrying.
That's great. Brad, you make up a good point. Brad Washbaugh, let me have you on mute. Brad was the one who brought us that last guest in the Lioness podcast. You met Sergeant Major Painter, who is Native American. And that's who we interviewed on that last episode. I forgot about that, Brad. I'm sorry, but thank you so much for connecting us with her. Can you give us sort of a preview of what your conversation was with her and why she decided to join the podcast?
Well, she was a guest at my former workplace during the Veterans Day luncheon and the cutting of the Marine Corps birthday cake. And when I listened to the podcast, I mean, this is a must hear. Here's a woman who wanted to become a Marine at age 4 or something like that. First time she saw a Marine in dress blues. And it's just a life of service, not only during her time in the Marine Corps, but also in retirement too. And as a Native American, she brings a compelling story about other people's cultures and her own, and how important the females were in the engagement team and exactly what they did. That it's a story that needs to be told because it's largely unknown by most people.
Well, do yourselves a favor. I'll put it right here in the chat. That is the main website for the Lioness Origin Story podcast. If you click on that link, it'll take you right over to that main page. You can listen to any one of the 9 episodes, but mostly recently the episode 9 with Sergeant Major Painter. She was phenomenal. Great story. And again, thank you, Brad, for connecting us with her, because we contacted her and she said, yes, I want to be on it. And, within a week we were recording. Tina, I want to jump over to you now. Let me ask you to unmute. Let me bring up your, excuse me. Let me bring up your research and your PowerPoint here.
Thank you.
Okay, there we are.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you to you, Sean, and Mr. DiPastino for allowing me this platform to reach out to female veterans. And as I sit here and I hear about those references and resources that came before me here, I'm making notes because I'll be reaching out to them as well. And then I will unveil to you all, or unfold, I should say, why I'm here and my focus is this today. And also thank you to naturally all the VBC members. I was not a member, but I am now a member. And why I've been introduced to this this membership has everything to do with why I am pursuing the research subject regarding female veterans to complete my PhD. So my first slide, I'm introducing myself as a PhD student, calling all female veterans. And I see that the theme of the Veterans Breakfast Club is stories, right? Telling stories, listening to stories that need to get out there, to be known, that are not very well known, and especially around female veterans. And why female veterans, we'll get to that in just a minute. But I'm asking and reaching out to all of you who might be listening or know people who know people, right? Do you have a story to tell? Do you want your voice to be heard? Do you want to make a change that helps female veterans now? If you do, and you think you may, please consider reaching out to me. My information will come at the end of this brief presentation for a completely confidential interview that has the potential to change the future of female veterans through my published research. So I'm ready for the next slide, please. Thank you. So why this research? Here we go. Now I will share with you all why bother, right? Why am I connecting to this resource? You can change that slide, please. Because of my inspiration. And I don't know if you all can see behind me or maybe not. This is my Aunt Anna, right? Who was in the 6th Battalion, right? Served in World War II as a WAC in England and France. I've known her my whole life. She's been a huge inspiration to me since I was a very little girl, but only in the past couple of years has a 6th now become recognized. And as one of the descendants, I have been connected to this organization and many others with, I don't know, a feeling of like a family. And I've never felt so connected like a family in this way before. Yet this woman's picture and her story has been with me since I was a little girl. And so I, in my own way, want to know more about her story, and sort of as a way to give back to other female veterans if they would trust me to listen to their stories. And of course, again, all of this is confidential. I am a counselor by training, so my morals and ethics and confidentiality are hardwired, as well as, of course, all of the legal loopholes I had to jump through with my university, naturally, to protect everyone. So you could go to the next slide. So who am I looking for? Quite literally, any female veteran over the age of 18. I'm trying to focus on rural counties in New England, we'll say New England, who have left duty, active duty for no more than 2 years. And you may have sought mental health services in the past. It's not a requirement. I'm really willing to sit down, and it would require maybe an hour of anyone's time to tell me their story. I can, and I will, in the latter part of this brief presentation, show you basically the kind of questions that I would ask to see if you might qualify for this study. And it's pretty simple. Here's some of my contact information and name, and I'll repeat that again at the end for others who might want to use that. Okay, so here we are. Qualifying question for interviewees. Which branch of the U.S. Armed Services did you serve in? This is just to validate that you did serve. How many years were you on active duty, to make sure you're at least 2 years out, right? How many years ago did you leave active duty and become a veteran? What's your age? Race or ethnic group and background would be helpful. How would you describe your satisfaction level with your current household? So these are basic demographic questions, right? Really, being able to navigate these questions would be the only true qualification to be part of this research. Please share the number of members in your household, including yourself, you're responsible for, marital status, and do you currently live in New England? And I'm seeing a question here, why only New England? And that is because that's where my aunt grew up, that's where I was raised, and at this point, if that does become problematic, I may switch to anywhere in the U.S. because I have been approached by other female veterans, but just not in the New England area. I'm doing my best to have that research be specific to that area, just because when you do this level of research, I have to find something that's unique. And this is unique to New England in the way that I am putting together this research. So that's a great question, and I do appreciate that and I respect that too. If you could move to the next slide, please, that would be great. And for some of you, this may not be new information, but this is something that I just sort of put together about the 6888 to honor my aunt as well. A book that she was interviewed in, the documentary that actually was something I was invited to watch on this site back in September. As you may or may not know, the film that's coming out next year, National 6888 Day. State of Connecticut, which is where I'm from, has a resolution now that's been passed honoring the 6888. Of course, you all know the Congressional Gold Medal Act of 2021. And then another person who is a descendant had informed me about this great legacy tour that had happened last year, where people got to travel and follow the footsteps of all of these wonderful women in the 6888 during that time. And so I think that there's one more slide, I think. That concludes my presentation. My contact information is here, a couple phone numbers, a couple email addresses. Please reach out to me with any question anyone might have. An hour of your time is all I ask, and it would be an honor for me to be humbled to listen to the stories of female veterans, because just like that was at the beginning of this particular Breakfast Club meeting here, those voices aren't heard very often. Those stories aren't told very often. So let's do it. And if that could be published, and as a result of that, something could change. Granted, it's a small research study, right? I'm only one person. Who knows, right? I have hope. And then in that way, I also honor my aunt that I beloved. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you all stay well.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be interested to hear once you're done with your research and your project, what that research is about and what comes of it. If you get published, that'd be wonderful. But feel free to stick with us here tonight as we continue on with the program. Again, this is Sean Hall, Director of Programming, VBC. I know, Glenn, you're here with us. You were co-star last week, or were you co-pilot?
Co-star last week. This week, I'd like to be co-pilot.
Co-pilot. Okay, I can make you co-pilot. Ben Wright, are you here with us in the room? Ben Wright, I wanted to thank him. I know I saw him. Yeah, I saw him earlier, but I believe he's not on video right now. I just wanted to thank Ben for last week. He stepped in and ran a wonderful program over at Christ Church of Grove Farm. So I wanted to give my thanks to him here on the program, and Brad Washbaugh, I see you there also. Tip of the cap. If you guys see me like struggling with a bit of coughing, feel free to ask a question or jump in with a comment. I hope that everyone forgives my voice here tonight. Bob, I'd love to get to your story now. Let me go ahead and pull back up that slide that we had of you, that dashing young man, James Bond here.
I wouldn't go that far at all.
Bob, you have a very interesting story to share with us. I know you were Air Force Vietnam. Maybe we'll get a little bit more of the story of your time there, but we're going to jump ahead to the now, and the main event of what you were here to talk about is how you got involved in helping to find mass graves in Vietnam. And it starts with a paper that your granddaughter was going to write. Randomly, this sort of happened, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it wasn't planned at all. She just sort of popped it on me. I had no clue it was going to end up to where I am today. Basically, she came to me and wanted to do a project while she was still a junior in high school. She has since graduated chemical engineering with a 4.0. That surprised me in itself, but she did, and she's a very smart young lady. So she'll do well. But, she came back to me about a month later after she asked if she wanted to change her mind. She apologized and all that. And I said, no, hey, no problem. In the meantime, between the first conversation and that one, I went back on to Google Earth and looked at Bien Hoa Air Base, obviously, and a few other areas around the country, because at that time, they had an agreement with a company called Panorama, and you could drop a pin anywhere in the world regarding whether you were in the service, your honeymoon, vacation, whatever the case may be. Pull in a drop-down box, put your name in it, tell your story, and add some photos to it. So it was pretty unique, especially when that's what drew me into Vietnam as far as looking at Vietnam itself to see what was there. And the entire country just lit up with pins identifying what veterans had seen or did. And I didn't get a chance to really review any of them. The contract, ironically, this was mid-October. The contract expired October 31st, so it didn't last very long. But it was long enough for a former NVA soldier to see it, and he proceeded to get in touch with me. He wrote to me in English, but it was sort of broken English, so you could tell he was having some help with it. But bottom line, he was very excited about finding, looking for the grave, and obviously that wasn't my purpose. But I had put a post on Google Earth, just at the end of October, and saying that at this site, and I put a pin down on it. At this site is a mass grave of approximately 150, buried on or about February 1st, 1968, contained approximately 150 VC/NVA soldiers. Our base was attacked at the time. We were told 1,500. We have more recently have found out that the base was attacked by 2,800. So a vast difference in the numbers, but we managed to pull through with the help of helicopter gunships and members of the 101st off the Southern Berm at their headquarters. They're right off our northeast corner. And they fired south and basically wiped out a heck of a lot of the enemy that was approaching right below their berm, not more than 40 feet out from the wire. And that's basically where not to be too brief, I'm not going to be, but ironically, that's the same place where the war ended as far as we were concerned that day. It went further to the east of us, but two of our F-100s got off the ground somewhere about 1 o'clock and dropped napalm right out in front of their berm, and that's about put it to an end for them in that area. But we came off post. We started about 9:30 that night. We came off post at 3 o'clock in the afternoon the following day. And that's when you see me in that photo picking up debris from around the base, around our hut area. What got me started on this, beyond that, after leaving the post and now getting an email, this guy's all excited about, telling me about graves. He dug up areas around the outside the base, had no idea one was on the base, which is not really the norm for any Air Force base, especially. Maybe the Army. I know we came across one at, I believe it was Burt. I know one is on the base there from the 9th Infantry. But in any event, we got into it when he called me and begged me to find another witness for the grave. I did. I found my CO, ironically. I had no clue what he would have known about this, but he eventually told me that when I caught up with him, that he's the one that stood by the grave and counted the bodies. I said, well, if you want a free trip back to Vietnam, they want us there as soon as possible. So he was somewhat hesitant because he has a top secret clearance, and every time he comes in contact with a military officer, especially a foreign, because that's what he dealt with. I won't go into too much detail on that, but he has to brief and debrief Department of State and Department of Defense every time he has that. So he cautioned me he can do the first grave. He doesn't know about going more after that. So I was okay, fine, not a problem. I said, well, I'll get you a date and we'll go. We went there, and of course, you had 26 hours of flight time to figure out how you're going to be treated. What's Vietnam like? Had no real clue other than what you see on Google Earth. And it's grown, it's changed. And but I did do some reading both before I went and on the plane, so I was aware of some of the unique things about Vietnam and the people and their beliefs. And some of it fell right into place when I got there rather. But in the hotel at Bien Hoa City the following day after we arrived, here comes 5 large SUVs. There's nothing small about any of them. Mercedes-Benz, Land Rovers, the whole 9 yards. And I'm watching this group come in, and I'm looking at the tail end of the 5 vehicles. And here's a gentleman in a black suit, young guy, about 25. He's the interpreter. He's sort of pointing at his waistline, pointing to his right, which is coming at me on the left side. And here it is. It's the Vietnamese it's a Vietnamese People Army senior colonel. And he walks up to me and he salutes me, and I almost froze. Anyway, I saluted him back out of respect. And we've had some conversations with an interpreter handy, and he knew about my wife's condition at the time. And he, first thing out of his mouth, other than the salute, was, and good morning, was, how's Diane? So that set the tone for the impression that, he left me with almost immediately. So I figured, I am completely comfortable. I'm even nervous now, even talking about it. I don't know if you can sense it in the voice, but that's where we started. And that's when we found out about the 1,500 originally. And that number has since changed as far as the attack. That morning, we went over on the base. We were greeted by eventually members from the Communist Party from Hanoi. He's second in line prime minister at the time, and a few other dignitaries as well, greeting us at the base while we were in the process of excavating. They did do mine sweeping at the site. That's one of the procedures that they do. And even though we didn't put any mines out there because we had canine handlers in the area, so we knew there were no mines out there from us. But in any event, they did that. They eventually found the grave. We were out there for a week, and obviously it's very depressing when you don't find it, when you know exactly where it is. And of course, they weren't digging exactly where I put the pin, so that was another thing that was sort of, on edge, so to speak. But I just kept quiet and paid my respects to them, let them do their thing. And so the colonel, my retired colonel, was my CO. He was his name was Marty Strones. He got in a day ahead of me because I got stuck in Philly on a storm. But when he had them for the first day, he had them further up on the road. And at dinner that night, I said, Marty, I honestly think we were a little further south. He said, I don't think they're up. If you were up there, you would have been too high, and they could have picked you off from out in the east of the base very easily, and you were an easy target. So they said, okay, fine, I'll move them down tomorrow to see what they do. I said, yeah, okay, let's see what happens. And eventually when we left, they found the grave 3 weeks later under the front end loader that was pictured, one of the pictures that we have there, on the base adjacent to where the grave actually was. When we left and we took the photo that you see there, I don't know if you want to pull that up now. I'm not sure if that was first or second, Sean.
This one?
Right there, yeah. We left a little bit after that. I was hoping they would have dug to the right of the photo, which would have been north. They ended up, that's where the grave was, ironically, and they about 20 to 30 yards behind that front end loader. And when they first moved down, they started digging the area behind you that runs for that's about a 40 by 80 yard cut that they made looking for the grave. And again, it's like watching sweat, but they eventually found it 3 weeks later on, ironically, April, Friday the 13th of all days. I got the notification. We were the first Americans on the base. No one's been there. And right behind us was with General Kelly about 3 or 4 weeks later. In July, they did you're looking at part of that 40 by 80 section. General Kelly was there regarding the Agent Orange plant that was going to be built there. He was there to sign the paperwork. We didn't know that till after he had left. But in any event, we were first. That was a little unique, and we were limited as to where we could go. And we had to, Marty and I walked down the road toward Bunker Hill 10, which was famous in the battle. That was manned by 3 guys that night, and that took the brunt of the attack. The Vietnamese knew well ahead of time they were going to have a problem with that, but they didn't know how bad they had it. But we lucked out.
Is that this spot?
No, that's a bunker. That's all sandbags. I don't believe that was concrete at all. And that's a Tonsanute. That's bunker 51.
Okay.
Bunker 51, the security police man that obviously on the perimeter of their base. That's on the west side. The base ends right there where you see the bunker. The bunker is facing west, and the road there on next to it. And out there, out of the picture, more toward some of the buildings to the southwest was the shirt factory, where they had both pilots, trained pilots, some infantry personnel, mechanics, waiting to break through to get their hands on the aircraft. They also had on the opposite end of the base at Tonsanut, I think it's called Vogap, and in there, that was the artillery training center. And the Vietnamese commanding officer, ironically, that day removed all the firing pins on all the equipment. And when they got in there, the Vietnamese commandos got in there. 90 of them got in there, and 90 never left. They captured them all, and that was a major save for Tonsanut. Okay, next slide.
1 second. I'll bring that
Sure.
back up.
Okay.
I'll make sure that we have the right one up here.
Okay.
Is that this one?
Yeah, that's Tonsanut. Yes, that's where they excavated more recently, probably in 2018 into 2020, I believe, especially the larger of the star that you see there. They tied up and limited construction of the Tonsanut Airport for about 6 months because of that, and they did not find anything. And all that information that they went on was by a local Vietnamese former ARVN soldier. The other grave, that smaller one, is where they found the grave, 150. That's where the smaller star is, and that's right near Bunker 51. The next slide is Bien Hoa Air Base. And you can see what it looks like today. And this photo is probably taken in 2018 to 2019 range. But right where you see you're looking at due north, east is to your right, and right where they turn in the dotted line, that is the 101st up there, which runs to the east. You'll see a road coming down, running north to south. That was referred to by them as the road to Long Binh. Bunker Hill 10, it's probably about, on this photo, probably about an inch to the right of the runways in the corner, the closest corner. That's where Bunker Hill 10 is. The grave was found due east. Real faintly, you can see the road. Again, looking at the perimeter where that dotted line is, you can see on the east end a small, very thin dirt road. That is the part of the east perimeter road, and that's where the grave was found. Real quickly, getting into some of the searches. One of them, ironically, while we're on this base, we know there's another grave out there, 424. We may never find it because we feel it may be under homes, and that's obviously what you see out there. But we went to a reunion at Branson back in 21, and September 21. I'm standing in line. I got Marty Strones in front of me. This was not planned, but Marty Strone and his wife was in front of me, and behind me another couple walked up. Marty was talking to a couple in front of him. Gentleman behind me asked me, I said, "What are you down for?" I said, "I'm here to brief you on the grave project." He said, "Oh, I know where this grave." I said, what do you mean? You mean the one on the east side? "Oh, no, this is right by gate 2. I said, "Gate 2? I said, "We don't know anything about a grave at gate 2. And anybody should have known it was the man in front of me." He says, "Yeah, it's right by gate 2. They brought him in from the road." So what ended up, this ends up being the quickest grave we initially found out and found, all within a few minutes. I sent him a picture of a satellite image of the base, which is probably the best one we have in resolution, taken by a U2. And I told him, I said, "Just please," he couldn't do it at the hotel because the size of the map was too big, and we couldn't move it back and forth. But I mailed it to him. I gave him a couple extra copies for himself, whatever he wanted to do with them. But I said, "All I need you to do is just put two marks on there where you stood. We drove over with the security police, He was an augmentee. He was a jet mechanic. He was out. He was trained, and we had him trained on the M16 and so forth, and some other material. And he was guarding the main gate at at Bien Hoa Air Base. So he had his hands full because there were 3 guys on top of the water tower shooting at him and the rest of the guys that were there. They lucked out, and the helicopters eventually caught up with him and took him off the tower. But getting back to the grave, they trucked the bodies in from Bien Hoa City and started laying them on the road, and that's what they saw. So they drove over on the inner road of the base, away from the normal perimeter road, and since it was still hot out there, and he marked the spot. And that grave has, to this day, that area has not been touched, and there are buildings it's completely surrounded with either road or buildings, and it looks like it's intentionally never been touched. So someone knows there's a grave there. That grave is estimated to be, he's estimating between 75 and 100. The grave we had on the east end was supposed to have 150. We found 82, or they found 82, and then they were able to identify 12. The ceremony for the entire group out of that one grave, again, we didn't know about the gate 2 at this point. The ceremony was held in July of 2017, and that was attended by 1,500 people. You know, that was a total surprise. The colonel was going to invite us back to Vietnam for it, but his concern was there's too many people for us to be around. And you just never know what could happen, but you know, based on what we saw and how we felt when we were there, we didn't feel it was going to be a problem. But again, he knows his people better than anybody else. So we missed the opportunity to attend the ceremony. That ceremony, they reburied them in another mass grave. They've identified the 12 from artwork, letters back and forth to one another at home. In that ceremony, let me go back to the grave while we're looking for it. While the dignitaries were in, I had initially talked to them, and then Colonel Strones picked up on it. I walked up the road and sat on one of the tents, and I'm looking out at the base, just pondering this whole thing being there. And I noticed some people call them dirt devils. And I noticed this wind moving around, and there was absolutely no wind at all that day, absolutely nothing. And this is one of the 2 things that inspired me to continue. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this thing for every bit of almost 10 minutes straight, and it's tearing the heck out of the area about maybe no more than 30 yards in front of me. High grass, dry grass, probably almost like straw, and stayed within this 5 square foot area. It did not move out. And until I got out from under the tent, walked across the road, I'm staring at it. It's still going on. I turn to my left because I hear people coming up now, the dignitaries and my CO. And I look at it again, and it completely was gone. Nothing. Still no wind. You couldn't feel any wind standing there on the outside of the tent at all. Nothing. The wind devil had turned down. It gone, and the grass, ironically, looked no different than the grass that was around that area. Not one blade was bent out of shape from wind. The second event was at the ceremony. It was filmed. We saw it, and we got to see a couple of the family members walk down in front of the dignitaries. We saw the first one on the video, and you see her walking down, following the members of the Communist Party, members of the provincial office, military personnel, civilian personnel, and then 4 honor guards carrying the casket, and followed by this woman carrying a picture of her. We don't know who it was, whether it was her father, a brother, an uncle. We have no idea. But what caught my attention was sorry.
Take your time.
What caught my attention was the tears in her eyes. You could see them. And you looked at her, and I just said to myself, you made this happen. Meaning myself. You made this happen because this is what I'm witnessing. I thought of right away was the beginning of her feeling closure finally, after 54 years. And excuse me for hesitating. But that was why we started the project right there. That was the convincing factor to continue. And when you think of this was 54 years she had to wait to get this far. And she still wasn't done because of the grave was a temporary grave. It'll be moved after they prepared a plot closer to their home, and the Vietnamese government will move it up free of charge to them and take care of all the needs for them. But it was a feeling that I'll never forget watching. But that's how we started. And from there, we started, Marty and I started looking around, and he couldn't do it, like I said, because of his top secret clearance. So I picked up a Cobra pilot from the 229th Flying Tigers, Rich Magner, and he and I continued on. And we also picked up two Vietnamese civilian engineers. And then we picked up eventually two infantrymen. We picked up a Marine, and the Marine is helping us supply us with 5 years of history for his regiment. I don't want to expose he does not want to be exposed, so I cannot mention which regiment it was. But he's providing us with 1,300 grid maps, 900 pages of narratives, and we will then begin to sort it out and plot them on our Excel file. And this will eventually lead into, these areas are obviously very remote. These are probably the more remote of any of the graves that we've looked at so far. So we're not sending anybody up there because we don't want to expose the file yet. And we won't expose the file. We'll just incrementally give pieces of it to the Vietnamese. And again, we won't make it public in the U.S. unless this guy says it's okay. We also received from the 16th Infantry their 5-year history. It's not as he boiled it down to two Excel files, about 83 lines of information for covering each of the 2 battalions, and that equivalent was over 22,255 remains, and about just over 200 graves in the 5-year history. For again, that's both battalions, 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 16th Infantry. Other than that, what we normally do to find these graves is we'll track down we'll pick on ourselves, we'll act sort of independently. This whole process is independent, and it's also obviously humanitarian. There's no money involved. The Vietnamese civilians that we talk to and or former military that come to us regarding Americans, they tell us they're coming to us because there's no graft, in so many words. And obviously we're happy about it, and we collect the information on the U.S. MIAs. I ask a lot of detailed questions of the engineer to interview him. I get the answers back. We review them, and then when it's all ready to go, I'll send it to the contact at the DPAA. And right now they've got 5 MIAs to work on, I should say. That's where we are with the MIAs for the U.S. For the Vietnamese, we've provided Vietnam so far to date minimum of 8,000 remains throughout the country, including Laos and Cambodia. We've had the opportunity to meet with the Vietnamese ambassador on 3 different occasions concerning this project. He's deeply engrossed with it, and a lot of questions always every time we meet. And it's ironic, it's a very good conversation that not too many people get the privilege of doing. But it's all down to earth. I sit there with an interpreter, his aide, and a counselor law that's required. And again, it's all formal as far as the questions are concerned, but everything is very relaxed. It's no tension at all. When we start looking for a grave, what we will do is we'll look up as best we can on the internet the action reports, the detailed action reports, not the summaries. The summaries do not include, they're more of a personal story, it seems, but they're not, but they seem that way. and they do not include any grid coordinates at all that reference how the battle materialized, what the exit points were for the enemy. Nothing to have anything grassroots to work with. So we look for them. They're hard to find. Not we're not we don't have anybody sitting down at the National Archives. We have help with Texas Tech. We're going to be getting more help from Texas Tech. I'll explain a little bit more of that if I have the time. But my point to Texas. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you'd like, you can discuss that.
Okay. It will be what I've asked them for is I need one call gets it all type of thing. When I call Texas Tech or email Texas Tech, I'm looking for this location, this battle, this unit. I need the action reports and journals. I need photos. I need satellite images. Anything get your hands on, I'll take it. And those photos and satellite images. If they have good resolution, that's the best source of information to validate where the grave is. We just used the satellite image, again, the same one that I showed the other gentleman while we were in the hotel about gate 2. We just found another grave at Ben Hoa 2-3 weeks ago now. And again, we used that satellite image, and he and I on the phone walked through. He's from Long Island, another security policeman. So he was there at the same time I was, and we're trying to match up photos to see if we know each other when we were there. But we matched up through conversation where he was in the tower on the northwest corner of the bomb dump at Ben Hoa. There was another tower in the southeast that was also doing something similar to what I was doing for a period of time leading up to and including Tet was a spotter from the water tower on the base. This particular airman was on duty the morning following Tet, the day after Tet. So that would have been February 1st of 68. He's on duty from the previous night, and he notices 2 tractor trailers not far off the fence, and they're in the process of burial, placing them in a grave. And at first, when he heard the noise, he called in to his control center and he said, "Can I open fire?" Because that's a free fire zone, is where these Army guys were. And he couldn't make out at that particular point what was going on. He didn't see what was going on really until daylight came up, which was another hour away. So he held off for an hour until he had a good shot, and that's when he realized what he had in front of him. And that's how we found the grave that we were looking for since the day we were there back in 2017. I'll skip over to the project I'm talking about that's coming up. We have a lot of interaction. It's a spinoff of Reconciliation, both with the DPAA. We just had a Zoom meeting last Friday night for about 3 hours, involving the DPA, two locations with the DPA, one in Washington, one in Hawaii. The one in Hawaii is the commander of the entire facility, the DPA facility down there. He was on. Gentleman by the name of Chuck Casey. He's deeply involved with the Washington office. We had Vietnamese, about 25 to 30 Vietnamese dignitaries and military personnel, some civilians dealing with the family services unit similar to our DPAA. And that's the crutch of the meeting was how can we find more graves, et cetera? How can we work together? Texas Tech was there. Ron Milan, who's the big influence of this regarding the project work with the DPAA, and his assistant professor Steve Magner. The conversation basically was, like I said, one call gets it all type of thing, but was to bring these units together to work on all graves, not just the Vietnamese, not just ARVN, not just NVA and BC, and not just US MIAs, but also ARVN graves as well as civilian graves as a result of the battles. So it's a full press court, so to speak. That's me saying that. But anyway, that's what that meeting was for, just this Friday evening. And we don't publish it, but we do provide There is another team dedicated to research at Harvard University. We give them our working file so they get the up-to-date information on where the graves are located that we've either come across or have actually witnessed, have a witness provide us detail. But it's every site that we have, and that's what makes up that 8,000 number that I mentioned earlier. So as we get graves and we find them or any information on them, we'll add them to that file, and the information that we've received to date and or the information that we still need to obtain in order to finalize the grave site as best we can. Again, through witnesses, ideally. Witnesses, the veterans, our veterans have been the most critical point in this whole process. When we finally get the material that we need, we start searching within the particular unit, whether it's the 9th Infantry, whether it's the Marines unit, 2nd or 3rd Regiment, whether it doesn't matter what it is. Even the Air Force bases with the security police, same thing. Once we gather the reports, we try to find out from who's ever going to answer us on emails through Facebook or through reunion groups, whatever. And from there, we drill down to the people who were on duty, providing, doing the search on base and, doing the search and cleanup, as they refer to it. And once we find that individual who's willing to help, because it is an emotional conversation, it can be. And this soldier usually has to get ready to even have the nerve to call or email me to say, hey, I know where there's a grave and I think I can help you. And that's usually how it starts right there. So very carefully, I provide him with all the information he needs as far as photos, any printed material, such as the action report, just for clarification for him. Okay, he may come across something that he's thinking of this is the right path, but after he looks at the action report, it is different. It states it's a little different, and so he corrects himself. So now we know the action report is correct, at least where we're talking about. But very carefully, since he's the one most likely picking up the remains and carrying them to the grave, we'll start out with, let's say, to make this simple, we'll make it a landing zone or a fire support base. They're all basically the same design, just some are bigger than others. And the fire support bases obviously have most of the artillery in the area. But they're all circular in most cases that I know of anyway. And we have him, as he exits the base, we clarify the direction on the photo or the satellite image and which way he walks off the base. And as he walks out, we confirm how far he goes, and we use the berm as the point of measurement from to where he's standing. And we also go over with him the different buildings that are on the base, because they may become part of the principles. Bunkers. The Vietnamese have found remnants of our bunkers. So we know that's a confirming source in the case where the bunkers are built in on the berm, prefabs. So as he walks around, every time we ask right up front which way you're walking, clockwise or counterclockwise. And as an example, he'll say counterclockwise. From there, he'll walk out so far. So how far are you? And he says, only about 30 yards off the berm. Okay, just I'll mark it. And if we're doing this at home and he has it in front of him, he's marking it also for himself as a reference so he doesn't forget anything. I don't want to collect all the data and then inundate him again, and then he doesn't remember it. This way, he's marking it also. So we'll go through that, and we'll eventually work our way around from the 9 o'clock position, if that's where he walked off from. And we'll walk around to, let's say, the 6 or the 4 or 5 o'clock position, and that's about where the grave might be. I'm waiting for him to tell me. This is like an interview. It's not an interrogation. It's not drilled down. It's not hard. The questions are not fired one after the other. We take our time. The conversation that you would think you'd take care of in 10 or 15 minutes, make sure that it takes about an hour at least. And it may take another phone call after that. Because I don't want to wear the guy down. I'm the one that's doing most of the interviews like this. Ironically, I wanted to be a state trooper when I got Air Force. I decided no. After I came back and finished at McGuire Air Force Base, I've seen enough domestic issues. I've seen enough threats with weapons from the bedroom, bar fights at the NCO club. I don't think I want to do that. I'd rather investigate. And here I am investigating what some people have politely said cold cases. And they are cold cases. But I make sure that the vet is relaxed, comfortable in having this discussion. Some of it can be emotional, not a lot of it, but the end result, he knows that sooner or later, the family will find out that we've got the graves spotted, so to speak. We've given the information to Vietnam. We summarize everything for them. We turn it over to the provincial office. We also send a copy to we make sure a copy of it gets to what they call the 515 committee. This way they can schedule. The 515 committee is led by a senior colonel in Hanoi, and he's the one that controls, so to speak, all these K teams, as they refer to them. These K teams, like in this case, are the people you see dressed in blue. They don't always dress in blue. Some of them are typical camouflage, but in this particular team is blue. And these are, I'm assuming these guys are Air Force. So this could be a base. I'm not sure where, but this was found on the internet. But this is basically what they look like. And this is some of the material, what they find. You can go to the next one. That's all right. This is some of the material that they find. Now in there, you'll always find sandals. They never go away. But you'll find fragments, bone fragments, and they'll separate everything out. They don't do it as detailed as what the American MIAs do when their teams. They don't necessarily sift through everything. Everything is hand-picked while they're in this grave. Separate it out as best they can, and that's how it starts, which is no different than the MIAs at that particular point in the process. In the U.S. process, if you've never seen it or heard about it, they'll carry buckets of dirt off to the side that they've collected intentionally, and in there, what they'll do is they'll have 3 or 4 sifters, hand sifters, are about 3 foot square with screen mesh in them, and they'll just keep piling dirt in there and picking parts out as best they can. That's on the American side. You usually, like I said, usually see that on the Americans. Let's see what else I got here just to make sure.
Well, let's I have a couple questions here in the chat. Brad, I'll ask you to unmute if you want to ask your questions.
Yes, thank you, Bob. I was wondering how they identify the remains. Are there dog tags or DNA, or how
they have no identification on them at all unless there's artwork that they have and they've signed their name to them like any other artist would. But letters, personal letters, but there are no dog tags. They have no names on their uniforms. In most cases, these guys don't have uniforms unless it's an NBA soldier. In most cases, the only thing you're liable to find with identification is their helmets. They refer to them as hats. I picked one up from I had an MP who was stationed at Tonsnut with the customs, and he came across a helmet that a captain was bringing, trying to get it back into the States, but he didn't have a letter of authorization. Customs agent said, "You can't take it with you." He said, "Well, I want to go home. Can I give it to the MP?" He said, "Yeah, he'll find a letter for it, but you can't leave with it." So, but inside that, it's a shame I didn't think to include that in the presentation. Inside of that helmet, again, was the only identification. This particular soldier was picked up by his fellow soldiers the day he died, and he was taken out of the field of battle. So he was buried in the proper way. We later found that out again with his helmet. The MP's he had this helmet for 54 years. He said, I want to get rid of it. I want to donate, do something with it. And he also even threw in the word trash, but then a person on Facebook caught it and he emailed us, messaged him right away They said, don't give up, whatever you're doing, don't put this in the trash. I got somebody, his name is Bob Connor, and he'll find a home for it in Vietnam. He'll find the owners. Family.
Without dog tags, and you would think a large number of these remains would go unidentified. Do they rebury them in a mass grave?
What they'll do is, the process initially is, depending upon the location, they'll take it to a central military ceremony, a cemetery rather, and they'll temporarily put them in a large mass grave lined with concrete and a large metal lid over it. That's what they did in the case of Bien Hoa. They had 80 or 82 of those small coffins, all marked. You asked about the DNA. Vietnam does have a lab. It's by comparison to the U.S., it's outdated. The U.S. had a whole team of Vietnamese officers, including some of their forensic people. They made a trip to Dover Air Force Base. They then went to Hawaii, and they saw the exact same labs in both locations. And the United States is giving them a brand new lab. And there's a couple $1 million there. So ironically, I made the comment, the DNA during the same Zoom meeting last Friday night regarding the graves. I said, it's my intent to fill that lab. And, so far we're doing pretty good, but the lab is not on Earth yet. Like I said, they had one, but it's not, I don't feel it's used.
Yeah.
There's some people that think it's still in the box.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, is there an estimate about how many unidentified missing there are? I think the U.S. has a pretty good number estimate, but on the Vietnamese side, is there a number that you're aware of?
Yes, 300,000.
300,000.
That is military personnel. That is not civilians. There are over 1 million in civilians that were killed. I think their number is 1.2 million. Our number, like you said, it's a lot lower. I think it's 1,578 right now, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Nancy Smoyer, I asked you to unmute if you'd like to ask your question.
I was wondering whether you have worked with the VVA, because I know they have encouraged their members to speak up and to help the Vietnamese find places where there might be bodies. And in exchange, they're hoping that the Vietnamese will identify areas for the American.
Yes, one gentleman with Todd and I talked about, and we communicated with the soldier. We do have the area we feel identified, ironically, in a very short period of time, and that's based on his input and photos that he took at the site, not of the grave per se, but near the grave. Ironically, where this person was standing, you can see the depressed ground level behind him off to his side while he's pointing in that same direction. So we have a very good feel on where this grave is. But there's a little confusion as to which base he feels was closest to him, U.S. base, a landing zone. So that's where there's a little confusion. So we're sort of waiting for the personnel on the Vietnamese side to go up to where we think it is, based on, we take the photo, by the way, and we line it up with satellite imaging. Then we line it up on Google Earth. So you get a chance, and we don't show this. You're bringing up a good topic, because with the American soldier, we don't show him what it looks like today, because he completely lost. He wouldn't know where he was. And it was like you just dropped him somewhere in the middle of nowhere. What we do is we'll show them the photos the way they were back in 65, 67, 68, whatever it is we have, along with a clear satellite view of what it was also like during that same period, hopefully around the same time frame as the battle. And that's usually what does happen. And we'll show him where he is and where he is in discussion with us, and we'll show the roads, and he'll eventually get to the point of pointing out where the grave should be, because now he remembers when he looks at the landing zone, he looks at the position where he was standing, how far away he walked. He says, this is where the grave is. That's when we take that overlays of the black and white satellite image, and as well as the photo from an aerial view, maybe from a helicopter, who knows where it came from. But in any event, we'll take all that and now we'll overlay it on the Google Earth to see exactly where that same spot is in today's world. So once we have that, that's when it goes to, and we've nailed everything else down as far as how many are in the grave, et cetera, et cetera. And that's when we turn it over to the Vietnamese in a complete package. So they have everything that they need to walk out there and stand on the area where the grave is. Now, what they'll do, they'll take soil samples in advance from their science department. Once they get the lab results back that the area is definitely disturbed, then they'll schedule an excavation team. And that process from start to finish, from once I hand it over, that could take 2 years before they actually put a shovel to the ground. That's the sad part. It just takes so long for them to do it. I mean, they're searching for what we're giving them. They're searching what their own soldiers feel that they've been doing it. That's sort of ad hoc. They don't find too much. And they also, these same teams are involved with helping the U.S. So he's got a limited resource is what it is. That's why it takes so long.
What is the cost, like per mass grave, that you search for?
Doesn't cost us anything.
Yeah.
But time. There's no money. The satellite images we sort of find. Rich went down to the National Archives to retrieve the one we have of Ben Hoa, and that cost like $30 to $45. I forget what that was. But in any event, that was the one that we've got. We've gotten others since, and there's no money transaction at all. There's nothing to the Vietnamese. There's nothing from the Vietnamese to us. So it's all strictly humanitarian. We don't ask for money. They don't give us money. We wouldn't want it to begin. We don't want to change our structure at all. We are a total now of 8 volunteers.
This has been sort of a very all-consuming mission for you, Bob, and it's a very interesting one. And I think the biggest question comes down to why help a former enemy to find these remains? Why would you help them? I know there are a lot of men who probably still resent Vietnamese and would not want to do this.
The first thing that comes to mind is and the most predominant one is seeing that woman with the tears in her eyes. Without a doubt, that was the convincing factor. Nothing, even the dirt devil, so to speak, that was a signal that we were close to the grave. That's the way I interpreted it, which we were close to the grave. From that point to where the grave is, probably another 30 to 40 yards south of where that wind devil took place. But
right?
Where the grave was at Ben Hoa, yes, the first grave. And,
right,
but I would say why it's knowing the impact, seeing it yourself for the first time.
Yeah,
you are impressed. You know right away that it doesn't take much to convince you to keep this process going, and that's what it was. Her in tears, because you're finally seeing the evidence, the fact that the woman's put up with, or the family's put up with as well for 54 years, not knowing anything. The Vietnamese don't find out. What they get is a 3x5. I think it's like a 3x5 sheet, or maybe it's an 8x10. I'm not sure, but I've seen both sizes, and all it is basically is very, very brief information on the name of the soldier, his date of birth, date of enlistment, and date of death, and in what province. Now that a province, so other people understand how large they are, they're not much different than our counties in the United States. Mm-hmm. And to find a grave in a county is almost impossible. Not unless there was some indication of a sign over the area, so to speak. But that's few and far between. Of any, we haven't found. The only one that the Army found one. In fact, it was one of the ones I looked up specifically on the 16th Infantry. It was marked, but they were buried by Vietnamese soldiers, so they would have had to come back for them eventually. But they marked on the outside of it how many people were there in each of the 2 graves that I was looking at in the report.
Ben, right? You have your hand up?
Yes, sir. Bob, thank you so much for your work and for sharing with us this evening. We actually do some BBC breakfasts in person that actually have breakfast. We had one last week, and we had a man by the name of Adam Points. who spoke to us. He also spoke to one in Beaver County in October. But he was an active duty Army officer for 2 years in Hanoi, working with the Vietnamese government as a liaison for locating U.S. MIAs. And very interesting work. He said it was an interesting history of the office working there in Hanoi, is that the Vietnamese people noticed how these Americans kept showing up and were looking for the remains of Americans. And as a result, they started pressing their own government, saying, we want to find our missing people as well. And that actually the American efforts in Vietnam stimulated the Vietnamese government into helping find their own people, as well as helping more with the Americans.
And they definitely appreciate it too. The military, the individual soldiers on the Vietnamese military, they're in the middle. They're the ones that are digging the graves, or they're the ones that are in service doing other things, just like you and I would have done in the service. But when they see us, we attended a dinner with again members of the Communist Party and provincial office, and it was funny in a way, because it's like going to a wedding. We're planning a wedding. If you're planning it, you want to put the most rowdiest people in the back of the room somewhere, out of sight, but yet, out of the way of, so to speak, the main characters in the wedding. So, and the main relatives, so to speak. But in any event, this dinner was set up the same way. The guys all the way in the back. There had to be 100 people there, and these guys were all the way in the back of the room, and they were in line with the rest of the table. It's not like they were by themselves. And so I asked the interpreter, I say, can I go back there and see these guys? Oh, yeah. We get some pictures. So, okay, yeah. So she follows me back and she introduces me. And it was, I mean, they knew who was walking up on the table, that's for sure. And they all started standing up with their wine, their little wine glasses, and they were getting ready to toast. I'm not even down there yet. And of course, the good thing, they make you feel so comfortable, is that they give you a toast. Everyone, toasted me individually. And every time you do that, you have to toast back. And the interpreter said to me, are you okay, Mr. Connor? Are you okay? Because he wanted to make sure I wasn't feeling the wine too much. But in any event, they're very, very personal, very friendly. But they too want to look for them. They're very discouraged when they go out, because they really don't have the evidence that we managed to collect. And that's even, I wouldn't classify it as good evidence all the time, but it helps us get to the point of where the grave could be. Ironically, I read, I always thought that, all you got to do, I knew there was technology out there that the farmers use. We'll contract a company to come out and scan their soil to see what ingredients they need to add for the next season. That's done by LiDAR technology. There's LiDAR technology in your iPhone for distancing. A LiDAR can detect forms underground, but they cannot detect an unprotected body that's decomposed underground. They can detect a coffin, but they cannot detect basically a mass grave. They can detect forms left from ancient Egypt and Turkey and those places where you find them digging up remains from, not remains of people, but just remains of that period of time 1,000 years ago. And they're finding that in some cases with LiDAR technology. So I started reading up on it, and lo and behold, I find that the DPA, the Army's Bioscience and Forensic, I won't get into saying which college they're funded, but they funded in the name of the DPAA to this college who is doing work to have a program to detect human remains underground, unprotected. There are chemical elements that as the body decomposes, it will leave in the soil. They don't bubble up through the soil. They remain in the soil forever. Ingredients or elements such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, iron, and zinc, or calcium. And if you did, in theory, I even got a chance to talk to the professor. And by the time we were done talking about it, she said, "You want to come down here and get your doctorate's degree and finish your education right here." She said, "You got it." So bottom line to that, she wasn't really giving me all the facts of the process because of it's still being developed naturally, but she says you're right on. So that is supposedly in process. Hopefully they are hoping to have it finished within 2 years. So you're talking somewhere at the end of 2025. And my thought was to her, I said, it would be unique if you could slap that thing on the bottom of a drone and put it up in the air, put it up in the air about 75 feet to 100 feet, and it penetrates. Because if we know the area where the grave is, this thing would basically save years of time finding the grave. You could find it with those elements still in the soil if they're there, where we think they would be, probably within about 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour.
Wow. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Cal?
Yeah. Yes, Sean. Hi, Cal.
Yes.
I have a question. I'm just curious. Since Bob, you have done a lot for fighting the missing in action for the other side. I'm just curious on how many American MIA that have been filed by the Vietnamese communists to help us.
I don't know. I can only tell you that of the ones that came to us, these were, we know that a VC general has come to us. I know that an NBA soldier has come to us, and the other is civilians that have come to us. At the time, and you know this as well as anyone, that at the time at the end of the war, if they had an American that they knew where he was buried, they would in fact move them closer to where they could, control the remains, so to speak, and they would use that as collateral for a ticket to the United States. We have one of those cases where they collected the remains again when they moved from the north area of southern Vietnam to the south, and they're investigating that right now. Now that's supposedly two sets of remains. The other two were in a tunnel entrance that were placed in there by the VC general before they retreated from the area. They were both dead, both soldiers. And the one that I found, ironically, the one I found was after walking the Memorial Wall for the first time back in 21. I found a collage of photos, and I walked over to it. I didn't see it before because I went to the wall with 31 names for the people that I knew from my grade school, my neighborhood, my high school, and so I'm coming back down the wall, and I noticed a collage of photos in a laminated plastic sheet. And I walked up to it, but I didn't see it when I was walking the other way. I picked it up, and here it's a story of a family going back to Vietnam to look for their father, which is probably going to be the last time. And I looked at that, and I thought, if I'm asked by the DOD to help find U.S. MIAs, this is the first guy I'm going for, and it is. So, ironically, this individual, we gathered information. I asked the engineer in Vietnam to see what he can find on satellite imaging, and we came up with a different satellite image than what the DPA had. I won't go into a lot of detail, but bottom line, it was considered new evidence and valid evidence. And that site was inspected about 3 months ago, and that was dramatically put on the list at a much higher level. That's how good the evidence was. So will we find out about that? No, the family will find out about it first, but that's by the total. That's all they're just those 5 that we know of.
Rita Adams, you have raised your hand. I don't know if we have a picture of the funeral ceremony, but go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Bob. Yeah, it's Stan and Rita Adams here. We just
How
wanted
you
to
two doing? See you live now.
I know, I know, I know.
I got your book right behind the laptop here.
So we just wanted to ask if you
Yeah.
could give an update on, I guess, the Manchus, the mass graves that
Mold
stand
City and Frontier City.
No, nothing new as of yet. No, nothing
Okay.
new. That's,
Okay.
that's why I said these things take a couple of years.
Right.
Right.
So that's no, I wish I did, but I know the engineer. He knows my feeling toward both of them, Mole City and Frontier City, and he's carried the message quite strong to the Vietnamese for me.
Okay.
So as soon as I hear something, you can rest assured you're going to hear from me.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Well, I take that back. They did find areas of evidence of graves at Mole City, not Frontier City, but Mole City. They did. They did that about 6 to 8 months ago.
Okay.
But that's about it. They didn't do any excavation yet.
Okay.
So again, that's what takes time. They have to get their science
Right.
people out there and so forth, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it takes longer than you wish, but it's their process, and you have to respect it. So
Right.
So was Frontier City the area that Captain Pulliam tried to give you information at? Because I was thinking that you found something about that. Of course, he's passed away.
Yes, he was instrumental in that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I was thinking
we have exactly what he provided, and he validated it 100%.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay.
We also had one at Cam Duck. This is not in relation to the Munchins, but ironically, this grave was given to the Vietnamese provincial people once before by someone else, and when they went there, they somehow got the attention of a local citizen, and he steered them to a separate place. And when I came around to spotting this base, in fact, I spotted it only because of an article written about, or a video about, Colonel Jackson, who flew the 123 down and not recovered, but got the last 2 Air Force guys off the base at Cam Duck before they evacuated. And I called him once I found out there was a grave there. I got a hold of the guy. And he said, I did. He said, and I gave it to them, and they went off and dug somewhere else. I said, well, let's try it one more. If you got patience, let's try it one more time, and we'll see what we can do with it. So we did, and again, we presented it to other people, so to speak, and the same officer was involved in the dig again, and then they find a grave.
Okay.
Exactly where we told them, exactly where this other veteran had told them.
Okay.
So because it worked on him for all the years too. They knew it was there, and he often pondered, I wonder if they ever found the grave. And that's usually what a lot of them say. Those who know about the grave and know where it is, they often wonder. They can still see it in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they often wonder about the families and everything else because they hear so much about our own.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd seen a presentation of yours, or maybe but there was a beautiful picture that you'd posted on one of them that was like from the ceremony, the burial. It was the people attend. Are you able to share that with the group tonight?
That's part of you can see that as part of the Philadelphia Inquirer article.
Okay, maybe that's
where you would see it. And that's the filming. The only part you don't see in that same ceremony is the woman I talked about earlier with carrying the photo of the. I've been looking for that photo for the last 3 days now, looking for it, where somebody sent it to me, because it has other information on it. But that woman, it's a photo of her and some military information that I needed for another purpose. And I can't find the photo. But yes, as far as the ceremony, again, the Inquirer article, the people can put my name out there. It says Bob Connor Mass Graves on the internet. You'll end up seeing probably right up near the top of the series of links on Google, where you'll see the website for the Philadelphia Inquirer. It'll say philly.com in the link. You try to bring it up as it's written on the internet, and you'll get prompted for a sale pitch of $1 for 9 weeks of news for the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's a safe process. You can put your credit card number in. They'll charge you $1. You'll see it come up in a day or two. Then go back and activate that same link again, and you'll have clear access to it. When you open it up, you'll see a picture of a door gunner that I'm on the other side. That's one of the things we sort of did on the side. A couple of us, we volunteered to give a gunner a day off.
Oh,
and we thought it was just, the right thing to do, considering they took most of the hits during the Tet Offensive. But in any event, and we were trained on the M60, but we were just not trained on how to fire from an aircraft. So we did everything else they took us down to Zion and we did some dry runs on practice landings and turns and so forth, and just to get the feel for it. But we would escort what that is. It's a photo of the back of the other gunner looking out over what we're escorting, which are the Army Red Cross trucks out of Vung Tau up to Long Binh and Tan Son Nhut.
If I may interject here,
go ahead.
I put in the Philadelphia Inquirer link.
Yeah.
I put that into the chat.
Thank you.
You have about 5 seconds whenever you click on that link before they give you your sales pitch, and you can't do anything. So I clicked on that and scrolled down really fast and copied this picture so that everybody could see it. We're coming up on time here. I know Henry Shepke asked if everybody in Vietnam that you've worked with has been cordial, or if there's anyone who's sort of refused to work with Americans.
No, as far as cordial, every single one has been cordial, polite, willing to help, wanting to help. We've had people even bring, and it's a shame, but we had people bring dog tags to us while we were at Ben Hoa the first time, and asked if they were valid. And we said the colonel who was with me, Colonel Strones, he knew somebody he could get it to and find out real quick, and found out before we left Vietnam those were fake fake dog tags, which is common. But generally, the person wanted to help.
Yeah.
And he took people to a grave site that had remains in it, but they were not American. So the Vietnamese will have to figure that out, who they really were.
I want to thank you for your time tonight. Before we leave, Glenn, I know you have an announcement, a big announcement for an upcoming Greatest Generation Live, but Bob, it's been very educational tonight and just an incredible story. We obviously wish you nothing but the best for finding more. We'll have to have you back on next year to sort of update us on where you're at with this and if there's been any advancement in any of the stories.
Yes. Okay. No problem. Be more than happy to. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A pleasure and an honor to have you here. But Glenn, go ahead with your announcement.
Yeah. And Bob, thank you. Fascinating program. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much. And if they need to email, anybody wants to email me anything, just give them the email address, Sean, and I'll be more than happy to read it and see what they want to talk about.
So the announcement I have, it's been on the web now for a couple of weeks, but it's getting closer to the date. And I'm just plugging one of our programs on Greatest Generation Live for Thursday, the 14th of December. So a little over a week from now. And it's with the famous, legendary, actually, explorer, Bob Ballard, the founder of the Titanic. He's interesting enough, an Army and a Navy veteran, mostly a Navy veteran. He's the archaeologist, the marine archaeologist that has found not only the Titanic, but many World War II wrecks, including PT-109. We're very pleased to have him on next Thursday.
Yeah.
I want to thank our great friend. I don't think he's on the program tonight. His nephew, Jeff Ballard, who we've had on the program several times in the past, who's an expert on World War II naval warfare in the Pacific. So just plugging that program and really looking forward to it myself.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Glenn. Again, thank you, Bob, for joining us tonight. We will see you all Wednesday morning if you decide to join us at Seven Oaks. Again, that program will be from 9 to 10:30. Breakfast will be served prior to the program. Hoping to see you all there. And we will be back again next Monday night with Arthur Winnick, who is the author of Nonsense. I love the title, Nonsense, Surviving Vietnam with the 101st Airborne Division. He'll be joining us next Monday night. I will be hosting again as Todd is still out, and hopefully I'll have my normal voice back by then.
Sean, I just want to thank you for hanging in there and doing this with that kind of voice. I'm just wondering if next week it might be a couple of octaves deeper. You know,
I could probably dig a little deeper on this, and maybe I'll bust out a British accent or something just to kind of give it some flavor. Who knows? In some way, I say to my wife, I'm like, why can't I have this voice all the time? Like, this is a cool voice. Like, this is the best part about being sick.
NFL films would be in your future.
That's right. Rocky Blyer around the side for the touchdown. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you again for Bob for all your time. And thank you, Tina, for joining us. And hope you all have a wonderful evening. We'll talk soon.
Take care now.
Bye all.
Well, that was